The woods were alive, I could feel it. Every rustle of leaves, every whisper of the wind, it all spoke to me in a language older than time itself. Even at twilight, the trees hummed with a hidden energy. It was as if the forest had its own heartbeat, a rhythm that pulsed through the air, connecting every living thing within its bounds. Our cabin sat at the fringe of this wilderness, a fragile piece of order against the sprawling chaos of nature. It was a sanctuary, a place where we could observe the wild beauty of the forest without being consumed by it. I grew up on its edge, both fearing and respecting its untamed heart. The forest was a place of mystery and wonder, a realm where the ordinary rules of the world seemed to bend and break. The forest was a place of secrets, whispering tales I didn't understand. Each shadow seemed to hide a story, each rustle a secret waiting to be uncovered. It was a living, breathing enigma, but there was comfort in its familiarity, a strange solace in its steady presence. The forest was a constant in my life, a backdrop to my childhood adventures and dreams. My earliest memories are filled with the scent of pine and damp earth. The forest floor was a tapestry of life, a rich, earthy carpet that cushioned my steps and fueled my imagination. Fireflies flickered like fallen stars among the trees. Their soft, ethereal glow turned the forest into a magical realm, a place where the ordinary became extraordinary. The air, thick with the coming of night, held the promise of adventure and the thrill of the unknown. Each dusk brought with it a sense of anticipation, a feeling that anything could happen. It was a world that belonged to my father. He moved through the forest with a grace and confidence that spoke of a deep, unspoken bond with the land. He knew its paths, spoke its language. The forest was his domain, a place where he was both king and caretaker, protector and explorer. He was a part of it, and it was a part of him. The forest and my father were intertwined, their fates and stories forever linked in a dance as old as time. My father was a man of the woods. He was not just a man who lived near the forest, he was a part of it, as much as the trees and the streams. His presence in the forest was as natural as the rustling of leaves or the call of a distant bird. He moved through them with a grace I could only envy. His steps were light, his movements fluid, as if he was dancing with the forest itself. Every twig, every leaf seemed to bend to his will, allowing him passage without a sound. He understood their rhythms, their dangers, their strange and terrible beauty. The forest was a living, breathing entity to him, full of secrets and stories. He could read the signs of the forest like a scholar reads a book, understanding the language of the wind and the whispers of the trees. He was a hunter, not of sport, but of necessity. Each hunt was a solemn ritual, a dance of life and death. He hunted to provide for us, to ensure our survival, and he did so with a deep sense of responsibility and respect for the creatures he pursued. The forest provided for us, and he treated it with respect, even reverence. He would often speak to the trees, thanking them for their shelter, or to the animals, apologizing for the necessity of the hunt. His reverence for nature was a lesson in humility and gratitude. He taught me the ways of the woods. From a young age I followed him, learning to listen to the forest, to understand its signs. He showed me how to move silently, how to blend in, how to become a part of the natural world around me, how to track a deer through the undergrowth, to read the subtle signs left behind by the animals. Each broken twig, each disturbed leaf was a clue, a piece of a larger puzzle that he taught me to solve. How to read the signs of the changing seasons, to understand the cycles of life that govern the forest. The budding of leaves, the migration of birds, the first frost of winter, all were markers of time and change that he taught me to observe and respect. How to find my way back home even when the path was lost. He taught me to trust my instincts, to use the sun, the stars, and the landmarks of the forest to guide me. No matter how deep into the woods we ventured, I always felt safe with him by my side. He spoke of the forest with a quiet awe, his voice filled with respect and a hint of something else. There was a reverence in his tone, a deep appreciation for the life that thrived around us. But there was also a caution, a recognition of the forest's power and unpredictability. Fear, perhaps, or maybe just understanding. He knew the forest could be both a provider and a peril. His respect for it was born from a lifetime of experiences, of lessons learned and challenges faced. And through his teachings he passed that understanding on to me. The air was heavy the day my father left. It was a stillness that spoke of coming storms, a tension that seemed to crackle in the air. He was going hunting. It wasn't unusual, of course. It was what he did. But this time felt different. He moved with an urgency I hadn't seen before. His hands trembled slightly as he checked his rifle. He kissed my mother with a lingering tenderness. His eyes filled with a shadow I couldn't comprehend. "Don't wait up," he said, his voice raspy. "The woods are calling." And then he was gone, swallowed by the hungry maw of the forest. The night stretched on, each tick of the clock a hammer blow against the silence. I tried to sleep, but the forest pressed close to the cabin, its breath a cold whisper against the window pane. My dreams were filled with shadows and rustling leaves, with the distant echo of my father's laughter twisted into something cruel and unfamiliar. I saw his face, pale and drawn in the flickering light of a campfire. He reached for me, his eyes wide with a terror that chilled me to the bone. And then the flames died, plunging him into darkness, his screams echoing in my ears long after I woke with a gasp. Days turned into weeks. The forest, once familiar and comforting, now felt like a malevolent presence. The whispers grew louder, the shadows deeper. Still, my father did not return. A knot of dread tightened in my stomach, a cold fist squeezing the air from my lungs. The villagers, their faces etched with concern, searched for him. They combed the woods, their calls echoing through the silent trees. But there was no sign of him, no trace of his passing. He had vanished, swallowed whole by the forest he knew so well. Section 6. The Face in the Window. One night as the wind howled like a banshee outside, I saw him. I was lying in bed, my eyes squeezed shut against the storm, when a cold draft snaked across my face. I opened my eyes to see him standing outside my window, his face pressed against the glass. His eyes were wide and vacant, his skin pale and drawn. He opened his mouth as if to speak, but only a low moan escaped his lips. I sat up, my heart pounding in my chest. And then, as quickly as he appeared, he was gone. The window was empty, the glass cold beneath my touch. Section 7. Grim Discovery. The search for my father continued, but hope dwindled with each passing day. Uncle Boone, my father's oldest friend and a seasoned hunter himself, returned from the woods one evening, his face ashen. He held in his hand a tattered piece of cloth, a familiar piece of my father's hunting jacket. He led the villagers to a secluded part of the forest, a place where the ground dipped sharply into a muddy ravine. There, half buried in the mud, they found him. His body was broken, his face locked in a silent scream. The forest had claimed him, taken him as its own. Section 8. The Weight of Truth. Uncle Boone, his voice shaking with a grief he couldn't hide, told us what happened. His eyes, filled with sorrow, seemed to carry the weight of the entire forest. Each word he spoke was heavy, laden with the pain of loss and the burden of truth. He had spoken to my father's spirit. It was an encounter that defied the boundaries of the living and the dead, a moment where the veil between worlds was thin. The spirit had come to him, not in a dream, but in the waking world, in the heart of the forest. It appeared to him in the forest, drawn and pale, whispering of a misstep, a fall, a darkness that had claimed him. The apparition was a shadow of the man he once was, a spectral echo of his former self. It spoke of a tragic accident, a moment of vulnerability that led to his demise. He had stumbled into the ravine, his leg broken, and lay there helpless until death took him. The forest, once a place of life and sustenance, had become a silent witness to his final moments. The ravine, hidden and treacherous, had claimed him, leaving him to the mercy of the elements. I looked at the piece of cloth in Uncle Boone's hand, the fabric worn thin by countless hunts. It was more than just a piece of cloth. It was a fragment of a life lived in harmony with the wild, a testament to the bond between man and nature. It was a tangible reminder of the man who was gone, a symbol of the untamed wilderness that had taken him from us. The cloth, frayed and weathered, held stories of adventures and survival, of a man who had lived and breathed the forest. The forest had given us life, sustained us. It was a source of food, shelter, and wisdom, a place where we learned the rhythms of nature and the secrets of survival. Every tree, every stream, every creature was a part of our existence, intertwined with our daily lives. And now it had taken something precious in return. The forest, in its enigmatic way, had reclaimed one of its own. It was a reminder of the delicate balance between life and death, a poignant testament to the cycle of nature. The weight of truth was heavy, but it was a truth we had to bear. Section 9. The forest remembers. Years have passed, but the forest has not forgotten. It still whispers his name on the wind, a constant reminder of its silent victory. I can feel his presence in the stillness between the trees, in the rustle of leaves, in the shadows that lengthen as twilight falls. He is a part of this place now, his spirit woven into the fabric of the woods, and I am left with the chilling certainty that the forest remembers. It remembers the hunter who walked among its trees, it remembers the life it claimed, and it will never let go.